Welcome to the Dalles Area Chamber of Commerce Community Affairs. My name is Alex Hughes. I'm the Director of Membership and Business Development here. Let's do a quick round of introductions, and then we'll have our host introduce herself. Let's start with Mr. Philip Brady. How you doing?
Very good. I'd like to share something on the screen. I just put a link into the chat that is came from the Columbia Gorge Health Council, and this is a page that has community health dashboards. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, so you can, it's got lots of categories, and in each category there are cute little dashboards here. So I'll go to healthcare services, and so here are recent statistics. These are 2020 on health in our region. It's got data for the Dalles, Hood River, Wasco County, Hood River County. It's it can also even break it down by zip codes for smaller communities.
Phil, would you go to the children and youth for a second? What categories within that do we have?
Ages 0 to 18.
Anything specific to availability of childcare? No, but they're all good data. Good to know.
I think there is a childcare category.
We are working with the Health Council to convene a forum of the hospital CEOs. First one is going to be April 7th, and doing that quarterly. Our focus on unmet job skills like mental health counseling, although we could take on broader topics as well.
Would you mind dropping a link to this in the chat?
Yeah, I would love to.
It's there.
Yeah, I'll take that out of the chat. That's good to know. Thank you, Phil.
Yep, you're welcome. That's what I have that's new and exciting.
Cool. I like it. Mr. Bill Lennox, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm great. I also want to just clarify that was Commissioner Philip Brady, for those that may not know. Welcome. I'm here as part of to support Andrea, as I'm on the board of Six Rivers Dispute Resolution Center and also on the board of the Public Health Department. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Dan Spots, how you doing?
Thank you, Alex. Dan Spots, Columbia Gorge Community College. Big news today. We have a Senate hearing around SB 482 introduced by Senator Bonham on our behalf. This would allow the State of Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Commission to recognize college training around aviation maintenance technology taking place at Columbia Gorge Regional Airport. The hang-up has been that that's in the state of Washington, even though the airport is owned by the city of the Dalles with Klickitat County. And unless we have that authorization, it's going to be really tough. Well, it's going to be impossible, frankly, from what we can tell, to expand our program. We're limited to about 15 students right now, and we could at least double that, even more, if we're able to expand over at the airport. So appreciation to Senator Bonham for introducing that. We hope it passes. Hearing is at 3 o'clock today, and we've rounded up quite a bit of testimony, written and verbal. So if anybody would like to kick in, let me know, and I'll put some links in the chat box. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yep, definitely any links that you have, feel free to drop them in.
Will do.
Scott McKay, good morning. How you doing? You're on mute. There you go.
I muted myself instead of unmuting myself. Scott McKay, community liaison for Circles of Care that matches older adults with that need periodic care with volunteers. Always looking for volunteers. The one thing interesting from that, I think it was, I was looking at that health survey, and that the median income for Hood River County is 86,000. I think it was 86, and the median income for Wasco County was like 60. So there's a significant, economic difference between our two counties. And I know that they may be a little bit concerned, folks in Hood River, about the changes that's happening to Hood River County. But so that's it. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Scott. Travis Trey, how you doing? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Travis Stray at Mid-Columbia Medical Center. Just a little updates. Well, same continued updates with OHA still waiting for our state and regulatory approval from the Oregon Health Authority. We feel we're in the final stages. I think we had 4 rounds of Q&A. They did not come back for a 5th round, so we feel like we've given them a pretty comprehensive overview of how our community can benefit from our system affiliation. In addition, Dennis had a great meeting with Congressman Bentz, who's willing to spend some political capital if needed. So he knows how important this is to our community, and he's in the wings and ready to go if we don't get some traction here sooner than later. I will tell this group there is good news on the way. I think for those of you who know Dennis and our executive leadership team and our board of trustees, you know, we had to hit pause on medical oncology, but there is good news on the way. So rest assured, we'll be anxious and excited to announce that when the time is right. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Travis. Corliss Marsh, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. Just listening in this morning.
Okay.
I do Habitat and the library and the senior center. Oh, the library will be having a book sale on April Fools, and it's not April Fools. So
Excellent.
I'll talk about it next week.
Okay. Thanks for being here, Corliss. David Peters, good morning. How you doing, sir?
Good morning, everybody. Sorry I was a little late. The links that I was trying weren't working, so I'll have to get in a little bit earlier. So yeah, you might have heard Dave Peters, Columbia Cascade Housing, Mid-Columbia Housing Authority. We made an announcement, I guess it was last week, maybe the week before, that we did receive those down payment funds that I've been mentioning for quite a while now, over 1.3 million. So there's some targeted funds for veterans, first generation home buyers, and all of them are first-time home buyers. Some of them are grants, and they can be stacked, so we can help up to $90,000 per person. So it's going to be exciting. We have more. We'll know more in about a week or two about some of the restrictions, but yeah, we hope to be getting some of that money out the door as soon as possible.
Excellent news. Thank you, David. If you have any links on that, feel free to drop them into the chat.
But not yet per se, but yeah, I'll get them to Lisa for sure in the future once we have that kind of finalized. Thanks.
Perfect. Tanya Brumley, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. Tanya Brumley with Northwest Natural.
And I see we have Kate Willis with South Wasco Alliance. How you doing, Kate?
Good morning. I'm fine. Yes, Kate Willis, South Wasco Alliance, and we're working on housing and health and food systems.
Perfect. Glad you could be here. All right.
Thank you.
So Andrea, Six Rivers Dispute Resolution Center. Good morning. Welcome.
Hi,
How's it
good
going?
morning.
So what is the you know, there's a lot of concepts here that I had the pleasure of meeting Deborah, and she filled me in on the scope of operations over there. You know, let's hear it. I know there's a lot of terminology that I think we could benefit in learning, I guess, how you guys operate.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for having me today. Let me just check my audio, make sure that sounds good before I just launch into a monologue. Yeah, it sounds good. Okay. Yeah, I was planning on basically providing an introduction or a refresher on what we do at Six Rivers Dispute Resolution Center, describe what mediation is, since it oftentimes can get confused, and then provide some examples of where mediation can really help. And then also how to contact us, how to refer somebody and what happens then, kind of go through that a little bit. And then also a little bit about our funding structure and also some of the stuff that's happening in the Senate that's very, very timely. So that's kind of what I was going to cover today. If there's anything else anybody would like to know about beyond that, I'd love to hear that now so that I can kind of, you know, be flexible and tailored to that. So if there's any burning questions right now, that would be great to know.
Would you like to hold Q&A kind of at the end of the presentation, or would you like to pepper in some questions while we go?
You know, my personality type is usually like, let me get through things because I might cover it and then do Q&A. But if I say something that just sounds like very confusing to you and you have a burning question, I'm happy to flex to that and make sure we're all on the same page.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to share my screen. I do have some slides. And so let me go ahead and get that started. All right. Can everybody see a blue slide with a
Yep.
lot
Looks
of different shades of blue? Kind of going on our theme of the river here. So, and you'll see on each slide some contact information for us. And so no worries if you can't jot that down right away. But yeah, just to say, in this local environment right here, I wanted to share that we offer services to actually 7 different counties. So we're covering both sides of the river. We get that question quite a bit. And so this is a nice visual of those different counties. And when I say services, what we're talking about is mediation, and that's helping people work through situations that need some kind of change, agreement, get on the same page, have a meeting of the minds. It can be anywhere from something that's verbal to something that's very evaluated and broken down division of assets and very particular. We also work with USDA agencies across the state. So that's a program in itself where no matter where you live in Oregon, if you have a dispute with a USDA agency, or if you have an adverse determination, which means you applied for something or you have a permit and it just went sideways, and they send you a letter that says, we're going to restrict your grazing property or number of cattle you can graze or the timeline or anything like that. A producer can request mediation, and USDA is required to mediate. So I can get into more detail on that if anybody has further questions. But otherwise, we are a community mediation center. So we're doing, we're working with folks from a cross section of our community. And I'll get into further detail about that. We also work with groups and help facilitation of meetings. We can work with individuals in conflict coaching sessions or teams of individuals where we're working through some of their productive and unproductive conflict styles. And that can really help with a team working better together, and that only helps with retention. So we've done that for organizations as well as cities in our service area. And then restorative justice, which is a form of exploring harm that somebody has caused. There's a responsible party, and we work through the impacts of that with those infected, and really with the idea that we're wanting accountability, we're wanting future change, and we want those harms addressed in a way that is going to truly help healing. So that is what restorative justice is. And then training. So we are training, we're offering 2 trainings a year in basic mediation training. And we've really strived to lower the cost of this mediation through a variety of funding sources. And the beauty in that is that we're now having folks sign up from rural areas in our service area, from more community members. So it's a more diverse trainee pool, which is excellent. If you were to go any other, most other areas in Oregon and Washington, you would have to pay somewhere between anywhere from like $800 to $1,200 for this training. We're offering it for $250. It's a 40-hour training. Because of what our mission is to promote conflict resolution, to train community members. And we just feel like the more people that have mediation skills are going to be able to help our community out throughout more and have more impact than just us alone. So I am going to get into how we're funded a little bit later, but I will just put a plug in that in Oregon, we're funded through the Oregon Office of Community Dispute Resolution. It's a really big mouthful. And that is housed at the University of Oregon School of Law. And we've received about $30,000 a year since 2002. And this is the first time that we actually have a bill through the education committee that we're hoping to increase that funding, because we can't really do a whole lot with that amount of money. We have to spend a lot of time getting other grant sources. And this is the first time where we have a bill that's going to help potentially fund about 15 different centers across Oregon and increase that funding. And it's so needed and so necessary. It hasn't increased in that whole time. So if you adjust it for inflation, it's actually decreased. So I'll get into that at the end. I'll circle back to that. But let's, I just would love to remind you, what is mediation? So mediation is a process where people retain the right to make decisions about the situation. It's different from where you might present evidence and then a third party decides what the outcome should be. That can be referred to as arbitration, or in a more formal setting, you might have a judge at the court, right, decide what the outcome will be. And that's not always the best fit for a situation. Some outside of that process, as long as all the legalities are followed, right? We always want to make sure people are legally informed, and so you can retain the right to legal advice, and we can help de-escalate that situation when one party wants to go to an attorney and the other party sees that as a threat. What we're usually doing is balancing that and saying, yeah, go ahead and get those questions answered through an attorney. And that's all it is this information that leads to better decision-making in mediation. So, so the first process of mediation is we're allowing each party to be heard. A mediator is there to help structure that and understand what is needing to be addressed in that session, and what would somebody want out of mediation if it's in that session or a couple of different sessions. Clarifying that, making sure that it's clear, understandable, that we've explored all of the aspects of what is the issue. And this can be a time where, especially in a situation where there's a power imbalance between people or organizations or groups of people, it de-escalates. So their thinking brain kicks in more. And that's what happens, if you think about whenever you've been faced with conflict, our bodies, our minds just kind of, they escalate and they can tend to shut down, and it's much easier to react. And then you come back later and you say, I got hot-headed, or I just avoided that situation, and the outcome is not necessarily what you wanted. And so we call that the intersection of logic and emotion. And so we're helping dial down those emotions so that we can understand the situation and people can then have their logic back. And that can really then produce these amazing creative results that are collaborative. So we're moving from there into a problem-solving situation where there's brainstorming, there's critical thinking, there's option generation. People are able to think about, how could this be different? And it's a big relief at this stage, because you can actually see the possibility of things operating differently and much more smoothly. And then we write that down in a clear, durable agreement. And it's a collaborative decision, and parties can always come back to mediation if something needs to be changed. A lot of times they kind of learn through that process it worked, and they might come back if they're faced with something different, or they might be able to address a new situation differently without even having to use mediation, because they can kind of understand what happened through the experience of mediation. So that's always a fun thing to watch happen. So the types of situations that we're talking about where mediation could be a good thing to try would be a neighbor to neighbor situation where you've got a property line dispute. Especially with a lot of the land use changes, we see this happen and come up a bit. And if you think about, you know, folks moving from a city to a rural area where there's a lot of agriculture, a lot of times there can be some nuisance complaints or not realizing, you know, there would be a certain odor or a view changes. And that's a perfect environment for mediation when people might be able to have yes, we can get a bumper sticker for that. Yes. And so that's one example. There might be, you know, maintenance of a property line. There might be a barking dog. There might be, you know, a dog that is kind of aggressive, or, you know, somebody might have bunnies. And now you've got an issue where you've got a rural dispute that might seem like a neighborly, you know, oh, they just have to talk it out, but people get escalated and guns come out. You never know. So we have seen that kind of situation where it can just spin out of control pretty quickly. And so it's good for folks to call us, and we've been referred those types of cases. Housing mediation is another one where we're putting a lot of effort and energy into right now because of a lot of the funding that came through from the pandemic. And so we're working closely with Mid-Columbia Community Action Agency. And we're making sure people are aware of the funds out there. We've been asked to come into court, and so we have a mediator at the courthouse. And a lot of times those cases the judge is asking the parties to try mediation then and there, and some of them are resolving. It would be really great to meet those folks earlier in the process. So maybe, you know, 3 months ago, and that makes it much easier to help them work things out. So we're working to get upstream in those situations. And then homeowners associations, they might have changes in their rules, or folks, you know, in disagreement over certain situations that are arising. We work with community groups. Some examples might be like a shared housing situation, a living an intentional community, or a church group, or any kind of group where they're coming together, they're not quite seeing eye to eye, and it's just nice to have a third party there to kind of help that conversation and explore maybe impacts of decisions or impacts of future decisions, and making sure everybody's on the same page, understanding what those are. We're also working with a number of rural schools with restorative practices, and helping teachers and the administration and the whole community within the school learn some conflict resolution skills, and that helps support their social emotional learning. Because if you think about it, it's the youth where they're learning how to adapt, how to manage emotions, how to manage adversity, and that the folks that we have working in those environments are just highly skilled at being able to work with the youth and work with teachers that are really kind of strung out. You know, they have very little time in their day, and as soon as there's some disruptive behavior, it can throw everything off. And the historic kind of reaction to that is a very strict environment. And with kids, that just doesn't always work. They're probably just going to be even louder. So kind of working with that group to help with that sense of community and connection. Because once you have connection with folks, you develop empathy. And that's where kids, and they're learning all that. And that's the school environment is a great environment to learn that in the right atmosphere. So we're making sure that those schools are supported. With workplaces, I think I mentioned it earlier, this can be, you know, groups of folks where there's certain individuals, maybe they're after the pandemic, they're having a hard time working to get well together. And what I've seen is I've seen groups of folks that actually need a sense of empowerment. They have been avoiding a lot, taking on a lot, and then they're just kind of like very reactive. And working through individually with a group can help with team dynamics. So we use a tool called the Conflict Dynamic Profile Assessment. And it's a wonderful tool that was developed by a mediation institute at Eckerd College in Florida. And I've seen some amazing results from that because it's an assessment style where you get some results back and then you work with a coach individually. Then we bring everyone together and everyone's gone through this process. So they have some ahas about themselves. They have some ahas about the group dynamics. And like I said, that can lead to really strengthening a team and retaining folks because they feel valued, because it's actually a leadership development tool and you're helping them work through adversity and develop the skills they need to become leaders, where you're going to have to manage a lot of challenging situations. We've also worked with local governments across our service area in a variety of types of disputes that can come up or disagreements internally or in a local public policy type of situation. I kind of covered the USDA earlier, and then lastly is family reorganization. So that can look different in a lot of different ways. But in the end, the family that's where our most meaningful relationships can be. And when there's stress and challenge there or change, it's really important to keep things de-escalated. And so mediation can be a nice place in which we can talk through what needs to change or how things can be different in a healthy, constructive way that really protects kids that are affected by that reorganization that's happening. So people have expressed to us in our surveys just how much they appreciate the professional environment, the professionalism and the kindness of the mediators. They appreciate being able to express themselves fully in a constructive way. And this can be times when people can express regret. It can be hard, a vulnerable place that way, but it's a very professional environment where it feels like that's needed in order to move forward and find appropriate solutions. People's understanding of a situation increases, and once you relax a little bit and are able, once you feel heard and validated, that's when you're able to hear and validate somebody else, right? Especially if you're in conflict with them. Because if they're understanding where you're coming from, then it's much easier to exchange that type of emotional and psychological need. And people are empowered. So they just feel much more able to move through the situation and understand it in a way that this was a growth point. There's no shame in conflict. There's no failure in conflict. Conflict is inevitable in a lot of ways. It's perverse, it's normal. What we're seeking to do is help people understand that it's okay. And actually, when you have an environment where people can express dissent, that's a healthy place. And then we can work through, strengthening and improving and polishing. I mean, that's how some of the best businesses operate. That's how, of course, our communities can work well together when we have a lot of diverse opinions, and it's a healthy place to express those. So I wanted to just give a shout out to this last year in 2022. We have some great data from all of the evaluations that we're getting from our clients. And one of the ones that I like the most is this: after participating in mediation, 89% felt confident that they could handle a similar conflict in the future. And that's that piece of empowerment that I'm talking about, is that through addressing conflict, we're actually able to then approach it differently in the future. And we don't always get to see what that looks like as mediators, but every once in a while, folks will let us know, how they just appreciated mediation because they realize that without an experience like that was beneficial and good, that how else would they have addressed it? And a lot of times they say they'd probably have to go through litigation, or else. I mean, there's a lot of times, people's situations can be pretty dire if it's left untreated, and then it just further escalates. So we're happy with the results of the last year. So mediation is confidential. So this is an environment where, in a small community, right, where a lot of us know each other, it's nice to have a place and a structure and an agreement with somebody where we can work through some things, whether it's business related and you're talking about things that you do not need other businesses knowing about, or within families, you want to be able to discuss a situation and then leave it and move on and not have the whole neighborhood know what your business is. A mediator's going to act impartial and non-judgmental, and so we do an extensive amount of training to just keep our biases in check, and to make sure that we can provide that. And we are able to do it over the phone, over Zoom, in person. We have an office in Goldendale, we have an office in Hood River, and then in the Dalles or anywhere else, we have partner organizations where we can use an office. So we try and meet people where they would feel the most comfort level in addressing a situation. So I want to talk through how to contact us and the best way to refer somebody, and then what would happen then. So I've got a screen here just with our contact information. But yeah, the best way to refer us or to refer somebody is just to give us a call or email, and you'll be connected with our services coordinator. Her name is Lori. She's a highly skilled mediator herself, and you'll be able to explain the situation and ask questions about mediation. She'll describe the process and the next steps. And just know that you don't need the other party to be in agreement about this path before you call us. A lot of times people will call and ask questions and then decide, either they would like to proceed or not. So I just want to share that so that people can understand that you can call without the other party even knowing it's a confidential call. And then if it is something where you'd like to proceed with mediation and that other party now needs to know all the stuff you just learned, what we recommend in that situation is just to let the other party know you called us and you'd like to share their contact information with us, because we can just give them a call. It's like it makes one step removed. It makes it a little easier for people to get this information, to learn about the service and how it might really help their situation without them having to make that call and decision to make the call. Like that idea of where logic and emotion, the intersection is really confusing. People are usually not in a place where it's like, oh, this is what I need to do. Exactly. I know exactly what I need to do. And, or they might think they do, and, it's not necessarily. So that's why we want to make it as easy as possible. And that's how that would occur. And when we call the other party, we don't tell them everything the other party told us. It's a completely new sheet of paper, right? Yep. We talked to the other party. They mentioned a situation involving your family. Does that ring a bell? Can you tell me more about that? And we can explain how mediation might work in that situation. You know, how is the situation from your perspective? So we don't operate as a third party that relays information to each other or to both parties. That would be a very different process. What we're doing is trying to get folks in a mediation, and then they can have that conversation together. Now, if there are safety concerns, we also have a process for that, just to make sure that people are physically and emotionally safe. So we might do what you've heard of as a shuttle mediation, and we reserve those for those safety concerns. And that can be very helpful for folks when they do need the situation addressed. They don't necessarily feel safe around the other person. They might feel a sense of coercion or threat. And so we have a very prescribed process there in how we keep those folks safe. So just lastly, yeah, conflict is exhausting, and a listening ear can be the first step towards resolution. So we hear that quite a bit when people do call us and we talk through things. That it's just nice to get it off the chest, kind of understand what those underlying concerns are, what those underlying interests are. And when we are validating those, then people start to understand this is important, and it's important to take the time to address it in a constructive way. I do want to put in a plug that our board of directors is growing. And what I've heard from our board is that the folks that they're on the board with, it's a very peaceful group. It's a remarkable team of staff, and you don't have to have a ton of time. So it's about 2 hours a month. So if you're interested in serving on our board of directors, please reach out and let me know. We can have a conversation about that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to reshare Senate Bill 600 information, because I talked about this earlier, and this is a bill that we're seeking to increase funding in Oregon State for community resolution centers like ours, and there's 15 of us. And so the University of Oregon has made it really easy. And I'm going to drop this link in the chat. Okay, that's different. That's the previous one. Let me grab it. Okay, and it's their form. They made it really easy so that people don't have to sit down and write a letter, but you can just fill out this form and ask the Senate bill or the Education Committee to consider supporting Senate Bill 600. And it goes into detail what this is. And it would increase the statewide funding to $5 million. It's currently at $2 million per biennium. And we could really use additional funding for our services in Oregon. And then it also increases funding for the University of Oregon's Domestic Violence Clinic. So if you're interested in supporting us, that would be a really wonderful way of supporting us. We just appreciate your support. I think I've covered, I just double checking my notes. So that was a lot of information, and I just want to open it up to any Q&A. And I'm glad that Bill can be here as a board member too, in case there's anything that I can't answer, or anything you'd like to add, Bill, as well. Please feel free.
Sure, I'll just add this. As many of you know, I've been on part of Six Rivers ever since its inception in 2003 or thereabouts, and off and on. And I just want to say that Six Rivers has grown incredibly in terms of its outreach to our communities. And as you well can see, we're a bi-state organization, and that Andrea has really taken it on since becoming the executive director, and has grown the program. We've brought in a lot of additional funding, which takes, of course, a lot more responsibility to be able to work on developing the programs. And we're just moving, we have incredible staff. And I really am impressed because I was asked to come back a couple of years ago, I believe, to back on the board. And the board is really talented and excellent folks. And I just would encourage anybody that has any interest or knows of any interest of being on the board and supporting Six Rivers to come be part of this, because it's really doing excellent work in our community.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Does anyone have any questions?
Let me ask a hypothetical. As described, the resolution process is person to person or small group to small group. If the conflict has a political nature, not necessarily partisan, but like a organization, and then there's a public, and the public is a not very well-defined group, but maybe has some key leaders. Is a resolution mediation scenario in that kind of situation appropriate? And I'm thinking typically like a NIMBY situation.
Can you describe what NIMBY is?
Not in my backyard. Something.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I know that one. All right. Yeah, so it's kind of like managing a public concern, right? Managing a public dispute in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And without having leaders, that does make it a little harder. It can be done, but it might not be mediation. It might be a little more like a strategy for getting community input so that people feel heard and validated. And heard and validated doesn't necessarily mean that everybody agrees to them or what they think, that you think the same thing, but that there can be a space for that to be heard, and that those concerns are valid. And then there's other concerns that are valid, and those concerns might be in conflict with one another. And that's probably what's happening in a not in my backyard situation. So we've had occasionally some of those calls, and we've helped certain individuals and groups through those types of situations. For leaders, there's a really good book called Managing Public Disputes. I have it on my it's by Susan Carpenter. And I really like this book. It gets into, for leaders, how to address certain situations like that. So that would be an example of where if somebody did contact us and there was more information, we could work through it a little bit more particular on strategies, and we would probably be referring to things in this book. So, yeah. Other questions or more on that?
Got a question. I don't know if it's for you in particular or just in general.
Okay.
School boards, elected officials, city, county will typically go through a board training, or should be going. I know the counties do this, go through a board training for folks coming on, being introduced to public office. And school board definitely comes to mind because of all the issues, emotions that often come up in that particular forum. Are they made aware? Is there some formal way of connecting those different trainings with organizations? And this is a statewide thing, because there are other, you mentioned that there are other groups, other mediation centers across the state. Is there some formal connection between things like OSBA and the mediation centers to kind of make new city councilors, new school board members, commissioners aware of those services? It seems like a good mechanism.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I think we could do more there. And I agree with you that anytime that you have a board that deals with a lot of conflict, or the new members and they're hearing conflict and they need to understand how to de-escalate or listen and validate, training can be really helpful. And I think they can go through our basic mediation training or contact us and we can work through a custom training. We've done that for some of the Oregon Department of Agriculture departments through our USDA grant. And it was right around the time of the pandemic. It was a lot easier to do things over Zoom with statewide folks in one room. And we worked through a lot of de-escalation techniques, since they were receiving quite a few, just with all the changes in policy, considering hemp and some of the issues in and around different growing operations, and then raw milk disputes over different perspectives on that. And they just do receive a lot of public complaints. But I think that's a great thing for me to follow up on, as far as OSBA and connecting with the mediation centers through the Oregon Office of Community Dispute Resolution. It's more of an outreach strategy, so it's a really good idea. Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
This is Kate Willis with Southwest Alliance. I have two questions. One, well, I have a million questions actually, but one is how much does water come up in your requests or your referrals, or what you mediate? And on a completely different but related note, I know that we're doing in Wasco County land use development ordinance updates, and that's been going on for quite a while. A big wave of that's going to be going through in this year and next year will be related to housing, accommodations, natural disaster, and it's going to, there are FEMA maps involved. It's going to potentially affect land and property. Can things be done proactively, knowing that this is going to create angst and conflict, like working with Kelly Housley Glover in advance to weave in some de-escalation before it even can escalate?
Definitely. I mean, it's much easier to do education and things preventatively and have forums for people to express dissent early on, because it's like relieving the pressure. So you have this avenue for relieving that pressure, as well as making sure people are heard, so that there's a way to document those things. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. So in particular, I'd love to follow up with you, Kate. Provide some more.
You bet. Because I do think public forums, going back to what Phil was saying too, it feels like public forums become, even though it's a process to be heard, it feels like those public forums are often a time for theatrics or this to really get into a position, and they don't work that way as a practical matter. So anyway, that would be great.
Yeah, I agree with you. We hear that quite a bit from everyone working in that public aspect, is, when the public is upset and there's the theatrics and the positions that people will go to. You're talking about escalation. You're talking about those emotions that they're bringing so much to those environments that it's hard to see what's happening at home too, that there's probably coming into that place, and it's an outlet. So, when you think of how a lot of land use planning situations happen where there's a public comment period and there's the listening sessions where people can voice things, those can go well, and they can also go sideways. And sometimes it has to do with if decisions have already been made and then there's a listening session, it can feel like, what's the point of a listening session? And people can get escalated just from that. So the more preventative you can get, and the earlier in the process you can get for input, helps with the time factor for folks to really wrap their heads around the change that's coming, and the decisions that need to be made and how complex it is.
This is Scott McKay, and regarding Kate's situation, I remember as a county commissioner, we had a planning director who set up a task force for Southern Wasco County regarding land use. And couple of things I learned from that is that it was successful. They came up with some recommendations that they basically came to a consensus, except for maybe one or two people, but it had to be facilitated. And then the second thing, it took time. And a lot of times in public processes, you feel like you don't have the time. You don't want to invest that time. But they did, and as I think, because of the efforts of the planning director, it was successful. But time and had to be facilitated. Just can't bring people together.
Very
Thanks,
true. It does
Scott.
take time. I see your information in the chat, Kate, so thank you. Yeah, I agree, Scott. It does take time. And well, I think in that regard, I'm kind of reiterating what I did say, but yeah, to do it early and often helps. And on these things that do take time and do take a lot of capacity, that would take probably we would need a little more capacity than we currently do to handle some of the bigger public disputes. And so that's another opportunity to support us in this funding that we need from Oregon, because that could help tremendously. Increasing that funding stream is just going to help everybody. It's not just about growing us, but it's about us being able to help our community even further. Because we do hear about some of these disputes where there have been a few that, and we keep them confidential, but there have been a few that we've helped out on.
Excellent.
I would say the only thing that we haven't been able to do is teach cattle how to read signs. If we could do that, then we might be have less disputes in grazing areas.
Is there still open range in our region?
Have we tried to dispute between wolves and cattle?
Yeah, and then there's that too. We need to get them at the mediation table. The wolves and the cattle.
Does anyone have any other questions? If not, we'll adjourn at 7:55. Yeah, Andrea, thank you so much for being here. Belenex as well. Might have just popped off, I'm not sure, but thank you both for being here. If you have any other links that you want to have us try to distribute off to the membership, let us know. I can be your point of contact for that.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Have a good morning.
Bye.